3 weeks have passed since I left my corporate job and stepped into the fool's unknown. 3 weeks of sleeping until I actually felt rested, of writing in coffee shops, of remembering what it felt like to have conversations with my neighbor instead of rushing past her with my phone pressed to my ear. This morning, I drew the Ace of Wands. In tarot, aces represent new beginnings, pure potential, the spark of something fresh entering your life. But the Ace of Wands is special. That's creative fire, divine inspiration, the universe handing you a torch and saying, "Here, light something beautiful." I'd been struggling with my writing. 3 weeks of staring at blank pages, starting stories I couldn't finish, writing scenes that felt flat and lifeless. The freedom I'd craved was starting to feel like a vast, empty desert. But this morning, sitting at my kitchen table with my secondhand laptop and a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, something ignited. The story came out of nowhere, like stories do when they're meant to be told, about a woman who left her banking job to become a baker. Not because she needed to eat, but because she needed to create something that brought joy to people's mornings. For the first time in years, I forgot about time. I forgot about my dwindling bank account, about what my parents would say, about whether this was practical or sustainable. I just wrote. I read the last line out loud. Elena pulled the first batch of croissants from the oven and knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. I almost cried. Not because the story was particularly sad, but because writing it felt like coming home to myself. My phone had been buzzing. 3 missed calls from my friend Jessica. I called her back. "Maya, finally, listen, I need a huge favor. You know how I'm always complaining about the coffee shop near my office? I did know." Jess worked in marketing for a boutique PR firm and spent half her salary at Grind Coffee on 42nd Street because it was the only decent place within walking distance. Well, the owner just posted on Instagram that they're looking for someone to write their blog. Something about the stories behind their coffee beans, customer spotlights, that kind of thing. Part-time, but it pays actual money. I immediately thought of you. Jessica, I don't know anything about coffee. But you know about stories and people. And you're an amazing writer who just happens to be unemployed and, let's face it, probably running low on savings. She wasn't wrong about the savings. The owner's name is Alex Rivera. I already told him about you. He wants to meet this afternoon if you're free. The Ace of Wands. New creative fire. Was this it? Was this the spark I'd been waiting for? Jess, Yes, okay. Send me the details. 3 hours later, I stood outside Grind Coffee, smoothing down my hair and trying to decide if I looked like a freelance writer or someone who'd just rolled out of bed and thrown on the first clean clothes she could find. The space was warm and inviting, exposed Edison bulbs, local artwork on the walls, and the kind of coffee smell that makes you believe everything's going to work out just fine. Maya? I turned around and, okay, Alex Rivera was not what I'd been expecting. I'd pictured someone older, maybe with a beard and thick-rimmed glasses. Instead, I found myself looking at a guy probably my age, with kind eyes and hands stained with what looked like coffee and maybe paint. "That's me," I managed. "Alex, thanks for coming on such short notice. Can I get you something? I promise our coffee is better than whatever chain you're used to." He made me something called a cortado without asking what I wanted, and somehow it was exactly what I needed. So Jessica tells me you're a writer who just left the corporate world to follow your passion. I respect that. It's terrifying and brave and completely insane. That's actually a perfect description. We talked for 2 hours about coffee, yes, but also about storytelling, about small businesses, about what it means to build something from nothing. Alex had opened Grind 3 years ago with money he'd saved from his own corporate job in finance. I realized I was spending 40 hours a week helping rich people get richer, and I just couldn't anymore. Coffee felt like a way to create community, you know? Give people a place to connect, to work, to just be. That's exactly what I want to do with writing. Create connections, tell stories that matter to real people. Then you're perfect for this job. Alex offered me the position on the spot. 20 hours a week, writing blog posts about coffee origins, interviewing customers about their daily routines, creating content that would help people feel connected to something bigger than themselves. It wasn't the novel I dreamed of writing. It wasn't going to make me famous or wealthy, but it was creative work that paid enough to cover my rent while I figured out the rest of my life. Walking home that evening, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Excitement about Monday morning, about work that felt like play, about using my skills to tell stories that might actually matter to someone. That evening, Alex and I walked along the East River, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered stars. "How was the first day?" he asked. "Overwhelming, inspiring, terrifying. You asked me what I'd write if no one would ever read it, and I realized I've been writing for an imaginary audience instead of writing from my truth." "What's your truth?" "That I'm tired of pretending I have it all figured out. That leaving my corporate job was the scariest and best thing I've ever done, and I want to write about that whole messy process, not just for other people going through it, but because it's the story I need to tell." "Maya, that's exactly what drew me to your writing in the first place. You write about uncertainty like it's a destination worth reaching." We stood there in comfortable silence, watching the river flow toward the harbor and out to sea. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Always." "When you opened this place, did you ever feel like you were performing being an entrepreneur instead of actually being one?" "Every day for the first year." "Why?" "Because today I realized I've been performing being a writer instead of actually being one. Writing what I thought would impress people instead of what needed to be written. And now I think I'm ready to stop performing and start being." The Ace of Wands represents more than just creative inspiration. It's about recognizing when the universe puts an opportunity in front of you and having the courage to grab it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety this time, but from the kind of creative energy that comes when you finally align with your true purpose. I made tea and sat at my kitchen table with a fresh notebook. Not my work notebook or my blog idea notebook, but something clean and waiting. I wrote, "What I know to be true. I know that inspiration without action is just daydreaming, but action without inspiration is just drudgery. When both come together, when passion meets opportunity, that's when magic happens. Sometimes the spark you're looking for isn't a lightning bolt from the sky. Sometimes it's a friend who knows someone who needs exactly what you have to offer. Sometimes it's a stranger who makes really good coffee and understands what it means to bet on yourself. The universe has a way of supporting our leaps of faith, but we have to be awake enough to recognize the support when it comes." I filled 12 pages that night. Thoughts I'd been carrying for months, insights that had been waiting for permission to exist, truths I'd been too afraid to acknowledge, even to myself. The Ace of Wands teaches us that creative fire needs fuel to keep burning. That fuel isn't just inspiration, it's action, connection, and the willingness to show up even when you don't feel ready. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is trust yourself. Trust that your perspective matters, that your story deserves to be told, that the voice inside you that whispers, "This is the way," knows something your anxious mind hasn't figured out yet. The Ace of Wands teaches us that creative fire needs more than just inspiration. It needs connection, opportunity, and the courage to say yes when the universe offers you a torch. What creative spark is waiting to be ignited in your life? What would happen if you stopped waiting for the perfect moment and started fanning the flames that are already there? Join me next week as Maya's heart opens to unexpected possibilities in First Stirrings, the Ace of Cups. Until then, remember, inspiration without action is just daydreaming, but when passion meets opportunity, that's where magic happens. Keep listening for the whispers. Keep watching for the wonders.